back to Motoring Box. I'm Sean McKellar and today we are doing a big one. This is something I've been putting off for a long time. We are going to be fixing the tail shaft on my BA Falcon XR6 Turbo. So what's actually happening here? Well, it's a common BA Falcon or B series fault in a way, and that is the center bearing here flogs out. So you may have seen when I was pulling this thing apart, if you give the tail shaft a bit of a shove right here in the middle, you will see that this center bearing is not holding the tail shaft properly. So what happens is it flogs out, and then the center of that tail shaft is basically not being held. It can vibrate and shoot around and send vibrations through your entire car. The symptoms for mine were around 80 to 100 kilometers per hour. I would get this vibration through the whole car. It wouldn't be through the wheel, you would just hear the whole car rumbling. And it would disappear about 105 and over, and 80 kilometers an hour and under, it would disappear as well. So that is a symptom. This little guy here needs to be replaced. But this is not actually what we're doing today. So I'm going to show you what we're going to replace this with. It's a big one. And here it is. So this is a brand new tail shaft for an XR6 Turbo, which I had made up. Now, tail shafts in these cars are different depending on whether you've got a sedan or a ute or even a wagon, and whether you've got a 5-speed or a 6-speed manual or a 4-speed or a 6-speed automatic. So this is a BA Falcon 6-speed manual turbocharged tail shaft. So let's cut this thing open and check it out. It's been packed well, I'll tell you. This is exciting. So this is a light series tail shaft from GJ Drivelines, and it is a full alloy one-piece shaft. This one's got the yoke on the end. Of course, I mistakenly unbolted the yoke from the existing tail shaft, but if that's popped on the end there, you'll see they are an identical length. So how does it compare? I would estimate it's probably about 10 kilos. This one is probably about 15, so it is a little bit heavier. It's not quite double, but there are a lot of performance cars out there which are converting from a 2-piece tail shaft to a 1-piece, and I'm not going to pretend to know why, but it does sort of simplify at least this drive shaft, and we're not relying on a center bearing, which, you know, how long is this one going to last? I have heard that on manual B series Falcons, that especially with the manual gearbox and the sort of shunting that happens when you're changing gears, these center bearings don't like it. So rather than trying to replace it and deal with it potentially in the future, when I heard that GJ did these sort of one-piece shafts out of alloy, to me it was a no-brainer. So with the power level I'm chasing, I've been assured that this tail shaft is going to be able to handle it. If you're looking at purchasing one of these from GJ Drivelines, do get in touch with them because there are different diffs in these cars. In particular on the BA Mark II, like this one, they have 99mm CVs and also 108, I think. So there are some differences between diffs over the years. I'm not going to pretend again to know the differences there, but do get in touch with them. Let them know what sort of car you got. Let them know what gearbox, and they will chase you for any additional details. Now, these are not cheap. They retail at just over $2,000. So do subscribe to Motoring Box, hit like on the video, share it with your friends, because this is probably one of the most expensive videos I've ever had to make. But I think it'll be good. It's arguably overkill for this car, but I've done that with a few other parts I've fitted to this thing as well. So let's get this thing installed into the car and see how it all bolts up. Alright, so installation on this should be pretty simple. Should just be able to slide the yoke here into the back of the transmission. Alrighty. It looks like it's going to be a little bit of a pain to install. It's because we're using these shorter bolts which have these sort of hex heads on them. This is a bit of a nightmare actually. Sometimes shit happens, and unfortunately, it's one of those times. Now, a couple of days have passed since I attempted to fit this thing the first time, and it just doesn't fit. Now, from what I can work out, The length, everything about it is perfect, except for the PCD for the bolts on the flange, which bolts to the diff. Now, from what I can work out, the PCD for these bolt holes should be 86 millimeters. So that's the diameter of the circle which runs through the center of every single bolt hole. That's just based on measurements from the diff that I took on the car. This one seems to measure in at just over 83 millimeters. So it is just 2.7 millimeters too small, but it's enough of a difference to mean that the bolts, when you put them through the flange here, do not go into the diff. They're just in a little bit too far. So what's going to happen is this tail shaft is going back to Melbourne to get a new flange put on the end of it. GJ Drivelines have been very good about this. They're actually paying for the freight back. They're going to fix it, and they're of course going to freight it back to me a second time. So I cannot fault them. You know, this is just one of those things. The specs which they had on hand obviously weren't accurate. So whilst this is going back to Melbourne, I've actually put my original two-piece tail shaft in to get reconditioned at Hardy Spicer. It's going to cost me just over $500, but at the very least I can get that one reconditioned, get it back into the car, and then eventually I'll get this one back as well. So what I'm probably going to do is I'll run my original shaft when it comes back. I'll reinstall that back into the car and we'll run that for a while. And then finally, when this one comes back, hopefully correct and ready to go, at some point in the future, I might swap this one out. And what I'm probably going to need to do is get a tail shaft loop made up, because there is a little bit more risk on a single piece tail shaft like this one. If it does fail, it can sort of be flying around underneath the car and it can kind of punch up through the floor and into the cabin. So you need a loop to sort of go around it and secure it so that if it does break or something, it's going to be sort of contained within that loop instead of just going crazy. So this is probably going to have to wait for the future. So once we sort this tail shaft issue out, we're going to be able to finally enjoy this car for what it is. This might be version 2 a bit later. It's probably obvious now why I didn't have a big video out in the past week. Sometimes shit does happen. This has been a rather costly part. It is one of the most expensive items I've ever purchased, and for it not to be correct is a bit of a bummer. I hate to let you guys down, and it certainly let me down as well. But we're going to get there. Sometimes things like this do happen, and a little bit of patience and understanding from your end does go a long way. So yes, stay tuned. This will be coming up in the future, but for now, thank you very much for watching. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.